All right, sir, we're going. You want to bring us in?
Yeah, we're in. Welcome to the Shock and Raw podcast show. I'm here with my co-host and partner in crime, Eric Redinger. I'm John Krotek. We're both out on a work release program, and we're here on this podcast show to talk about and to discuss critical issues that are affecting all of us right now, and that being how we use our hearts and how we use our brains to analyze all of the unreliable information that has got families divided and societies being dismantled and genders being disempowered, and in some cases, Eric and I talk about it all the time, we're seeing whole cultures being destroyed.
Right. And it's really the thing that we've boiled it down to is a lack of critical thinking, a lack of taking the time to go, well, wait, if this is this and that's that, then doesn't this mean that, having that sort of effort that you're putting in rather than say hearing something being like, oh, I guess that's true, I guess that's what the reality is, and I'm just going to move on with my day because I got bills to pay and I got to pick up the kids and I got all my own stuff to do. And it's a huge problem. It's just the entire world is getting fed whatever that person wants to feed them, and they're not pushing back at all.
No, they're not. And that's a great way of putting it, Eric. And that's what, the name of our show is Shock and Raw. I mentioned it a couple of minutes ago. And, we're not here to be rebel rousers. Well, maybe we are, but we want that the shock is the story and the raw is the conversation. And we're going to hold nothing back. You might hear some opinions, but you're probably going to you're going to hear more truth than opinions. And we're just glad that you're here. Eric said it so eloquently. The lack of critical thinking is what has us in the tizzy that we find ourselves in. Frustrated families being divided and disempowered gender roles. Oh, roles, not identities, right, Eric? The dismantling of law and order in our civilized societies, and really, in some cases, whole cultures of people being destroyed. We're going to get to the bottom of it. We're going to provoke you to use that gray matter and to not just do everything with your heart.
Yeah, and I think actually a good example, this is kind of flying by the seat of our pants there, but you mentioned gender roles. And that I think is something that people get all, oh, what is he talking about gender stuff? Oh, we got to get, that's going to be a problem. Yeah, and that's, I think, a good example of something that we can implement some critical thinking into what you're referring to and not just doing what I'm saying people do, which is just make an assumption, make a decision about what they've heard and then just move on. Because you're talking about gender roles in terms of not necessarily a man should do this and a woman should do this. It's more of traditionally there is a parent who does these things and there's a parent who does these jobs for children, and it could be a man or a woman either way, but we've sort of made them, traditionally there's a gender that does one or the other. Does that make sense?
Spot on. Absolutely makes sense. And that's what you mentioned, tradition, right? And what is tradition? And people say we have to break out of these traditions. Well, traditionally, these genders did have a role. And it's not to say that a man's primary role is to protect his family from threats, right? That goes way back since cave painting days. If Eric and I were in a cave and we heard something outside, it's going to be him and I that grab the spears. It's not going to be him and I sitting
Right.
at the
We're
fire.
not sending the women out.
And go outside, woman,
Right.
troglodyte, right? And go out there and take care of that saber-toothed tiger. So we have these traditional gender roles. They cross-pollinate. I know some mama bears that will do anything to save her cubs. So this isn't about what you identify with. This is about just the role that you fill. And Eric said it correctly. We there's a traditional role that each gender has performed before. And now they're all janked up. You know, they're trying to emasculate men by saying masculinity is toxic. And yeah, it's toxic. Take away a man's purpose, emasculate him, and guess what's going to happen?
Right.
It's not going to be pretty. That's why we see what's going on these days, part of it. But yeah.
Yeah. And on the flip side, you know, there's so many things on TV and movies for women where it's like they've got the job, they've got the kid, they make millions of dollars, they do it all. And it's like, that's TV show, you know, like that is not necessarily sustainable or real, but yet it fills people's heads with these ideas of what is expected of them or what's possible for them, when it's just like, realistically, you know, we need to kind of take a step back and say, listen, you know, children growing up are missing out on a lot of important, you know, lessons and examples because of, you know, well, the mom's got to work 80 hours a week. So, you know, they've got a nanny and a housekeeper. And it's just like, what are we doing this for? You know, like, what is the point of the 80-hour work week if you're not able to do whatever you want with your kids, you know? So it goes back and forth.
That's a good point. You know, my personal experience in life was my mom worked part-time when we were all at home, but the formative years, my mom was in the house, and some people are, oh, you're just a chauvinist pig. Well, call it whatever you want, but that was what I was raised with. And believe me, my dad did not allow us to be chauvinist pigs.
Right.
We respected our mom. We knew who to go to when we needed to get things done. We didn't go to dad because usually he'd spank the crap out of me, you know, for whatever it was. And once mom got everything on cruise control, and kids are never cruise control, then she went outside and did her thing. And some women have that need to maybe want to be a CEO of a corporation, and that's okay. But like Eric just said, that's not the norm. And people say, well, what is the norm? Well, it's definitely not neo-masculinity, the definition that you find online. A man can't be masculine unless he embraces a changing social norm. Boy, that sounds good on paper, right, Eric? But what happens if the changing social norm is not based on the truth or on facts or on science?
Right.
What, a man's got to lie to be masculine?
Yeah.
Let's talk about toxicity. A lying man is very toxic, and it ain't physical. It's just unintegral.
Yeah. So
critical thinking, you know, what is critical thinking? And I know to me, it's the scientific method. It's coming up with a hypothesis, and it's trying to figure out if what you believe is true. And you do it by trial and error and research and due diligence and to figure out what you're trying to figure out, which is ultimately the truth.
Yeah. Yeah. It's actually doing a little bit of mental work, you know. It's not even necessarily research sometimes, you know, like you can be done up here. The critical thinking can be done up here based on your life experience.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know of an example, but where it's just like, let's say that guy says that he got hit in the car, and it's the lady in front of his that he hit. It's her fault, where it's like he's hitting her from behind. And if the car stopped, you know, some people will be like, oh, well, you know, she must have stopped suddenly, or she backed into him or whatever, when it's just like critical thinking allows us to say, well, if he's going forward, he's the one probably at fault. But some people won't even take it that far, you know, where it's like, okay, you're just going to take it for what it is, I guess.
Well, you said that's a good example. You know, you said the word that people shy away from when it comes to using their cerebral gray matter, that brain on the backdrop behind me. I can remember in college, if I went into a college and we were handed a syllabus, and on that syllabus was a term paper, part of the requirements for that course. We had some term papers in high school too, but you know, those of you who have been to college, they're much more advanced.
Right.
And I knew right then and there that class was going to require work. You were going to have to go to the library. You were going to have to learn how to the library, the cards, and figure out the books. come up with your statement, and then your body, and then figure it out how to do footnotes and all that. That class was going to be work. Okay. And Eric said it's not complicated. You just know that it's going to take some brain power and some effort. So fast forward to my work, to my therapy when I was dealing with a brain injury. And 3 months into my brain injury, my therapist is smiling at me. I thought I had done something wrong, right, Eric? And so I said, "What's up, Cheryl? What's going on?" She says, "I'm happy. I'm happy." "Why are you happy?" She said, "John, you're doing the work." And Eric mentioned earlier about nobody doing the work, people becoming intellectually lazy. So what does that mean? You're not doing the work. You're just listening to something. Oh, he must be an expert. He's an influencer. He's got 10 million viewers. That does not make somebody wise. It just makes somebody that's got 10 million viewers and they're making bank off of getting you to come look at their platform.
I mean, John, it's crazy. The amount of stuff I see on Instagram where people will just say insane stuff that they do, and they're so like adamant about it. They're like, "No, this is that's true," and then they have this whole thing that they're eventually selling something or whatever. But like the level of confidence that they have in just total bullshit, honestly, is insane to me. That it's just like there's nobody checking them, and then they develop this whole group of followers that buy into the same thing, and then because that 10 million follower person said it, it's real.
Gotta be real. And how dare you insult them and try and question what they have to say about the earth being flat or something, where it's just like, dude, like I can't ask questions. I can't ask questions. It is insane. Think about this for a second, and don't tell me that you've never seen this, right? I have seen high school age influencers and people that have just graduated from college that are experts on relationships and marriage, that have never been married, experts on foreign policy,
right?
Experts on economic systems and how they work.
Yeah.
How to run a household.
Yeah.
How to keep a checkbook and a balance, and how to go grocery shopping, and how to run a business. And they've never had a business, but they've got 10 million followers giving out no value, and they have you swept up in the excitement of it all just because they got numbers. I have never met a kid in high school yet, to include myself when I was in high school, that's an expert on relationships.
Right. Like, I don't know a lot of grown-ass men or women that are actually like understanding of relation. I mean, I don't know if anybody really is, because it's such an individualistic situation. But yeah, high schoolers, that made me laugh out loud. Like,
imagine being a high schooler. You've never left the country. You've never left the city you live in, right? Or maybe the state, let's say. And you're an expert on foreign policy.
Yeah.
You're 16 years old. You've taken a social studies class.
Right.
Listen, we love the young people, but this empowerment with this influencer expert thing, wow, has it really degraded the way people interact with each other? And I see people, take yourself, for instance, the wisdom that you've got, Eric, right? You don't have 10 million followers, but you could give out more wisdom in 10 minutes than that kid could do all year long in 10
right.
Anyhow, yeah.
Yeah, it's funny.
Don't want to knock him. Yeah, we're not here to denigrate anybody.
Right. But that word
real.
Empowerment, it's like, man, the internet came out. It's like, oh, great. It's going to change everything. Yeah, it did. And I don't think it's a good thing. Like, it's just the level of people getting away with stuff is very frustrating.
that's a whole other the whole concept of consequences.
Yeah.
When I was growing up, in the neighborhood, everybody knew each other. We called it the Coconut Telegraph. Jimmy Buffett might have brought that up, but I if I did something wrong that I knew, or that somebody saw me in the neighborhood and word got back, there were consequences.
Right.
Even if we didn't come to dinner on time, there were consequences.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think I ever remember myself throwing a temper tantrum in a Sears and Roebuck store.
Right.
Because my mom, God bless her, the mom she was all about discipline. And if your child is screaming and yelling, and of course I'm pulling up, children get rowdy sometimes, but if you can't discipline your child to behave in public, something as simple as that, that's how the world has changed. And you're right, Eric. Lack of consequences has got us to this place.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. That's interesting about the kid discipline thing, because you see it more and more now, where I see people like their kids are not behaving, but they'll make excuses for whatever reason, which I just consider to be an ego thing, where it's like, oh, you're talking about my kid. That's like talking about me, rather than like, well, it kind of is talking about you and your lack of parenting, where it's just like, man, like, am I taking crazy pills here? You're not doing anything and they're acting insane. How is that not on you?
Great point. I took a business trip. I was down in Miami Beach beginning of the year, and sitting across my row, the aisle in the plane, was a man who was on his cell phone. Okay. He had a son and a daughter, probably 4th or 5th grade. They were old enough. Those kids acted out the whole time trying to get their father's attention. And he was just oblivious, his nose glued to the blue screen and getting frustrated with it, because how's it on planes? You don't always get the right signal. Mm-hmm. And his kids, he had 2 beautiful kids. And you're right, man. That guy, how are those kids going to grow up if there's no hands-on? And then the kids do something ridiculous and he goes off the graph and spanks the hell out of them when it really isn't their fault. The guy ignores his kids for a 2.5-hour flight. Why isn't he looking out the window and going, look, Jenny, that's a cumulus cloud.
Right.
Oh, look, those are the jet engines on the wing.
Right.
Why is he glued to some stupid feed when he's got these beautiful kids that he could be educating?
Yeah.
Anyhow.
No, but you made a good point about the attention. That was something I learned. This is just a little side note on parenting, where kids just want they just want their parents' attention, and it's so much now where it's like the acting out, misbehaving is when the parents react and give them their attention, and that's why you see it so much. Whereas if they say, hey, that's a great job you did with that nice thing you did, and they start to pay attention to that sort of thing and praise them when they do good, that's the difference. It's like, if the only time you're ever interacting with them is to yell at them, they're not going to be good kids, because that's the only time they get to talk to their parents, is when they're getting yelled at. And it's like,
and then they're going to go out of their way to do things to get yelled at.
Yeah.
Just to get validated. Okay, that's all they do is yell at me, so we might as well do something stupid.
Right. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. So we get back, and I know that you were asking the question that how has the lack of critical thinking impacted the current state of the world? Right. Okay. Look around. Yes. Now, how would you describe people? Right. Angry.
Yep.
Frustrated.
Mm-hmm.
Confused.
Mm-hmm.
And duped.
Yes.
That would just be my 4 things. What would, that's how it's affected. And who wants to live in a world where everybody's angry?
Uh-huh.
Nobody knows what the hell's going on because they're so frustrated and confused, but they're duped. They're believing stuff that's just not true, not based on science. It's just outright damn ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
Could be an ideological, radical belief that That's another one, communism and socialism, but we can go there later. But things that have never ever worked, and yet the human organism continues to divide those around them, thinking that it is how that's how critical thinking has affected people. They're just out of control.
Yeah, and I'm throw in there to sort of like cover it all is just a sense of, I don't want to say if hopelessness is the right word, but like a sense of like defeat, a sense of, well, they're just going to do what they want to do. And what can we do about it? The sense of like, oh, well, there's not, even if you think of it politically, what are we going to do about it and all that stuff? It's like, well, there's way more people who are not politicians than there are politicians, and I'm just using politics as an example, but just, because it bleeds into almost everything, the food we eat, the cars we drive, everything is sort of funneled at us in a way that like we don't have the choices that we might think we have. Reminds me of those graphics where it's like, here's the 4 companies in the world that own everything, and it's just like, God, that does make me feel a little defeated. But in general, I think the people doing all this stuff, this weird control that is trying to be forced on us,
Well, yes, mathematical computations and algorithms with a capital A.
Yeah.
We're all being affected by it. And here's how I would kind of, how has the lack of critical thinking affected my own life? Okay. The lack of critical thinking is normally reacting or behaving with all your heart. You're reactive. And so you're not thinking. So how's it affected my life? When I'm not thinking, 9 times out of 10, I'm going to do something stupid. I'm just going to, God, I wasn't thinking. I'm sorry. So think about this. So we have our beliefs, which is a lot of heart. And then we have our thoughts, which is the gray matter. And I call it balance. We have, as human organisms, it's got to find a way to find this balance. And you've heard the 5-second rule, right, Eric? We've heard that.
Oh, yeah. If it falls on the floor, you can eat it within 5 seconds.
Yeah. Same thing. Oh my gosh, we got to react right now. Well, they tell you wait 5 seconds before you react. Okay. Well, I'm nonsense. I'm stubborn. If I wait 5 seconds, I'm going to do it anyways. My heart is going to override that shit. So
sure, I'll play your game. I'll do the same shit in 5 seconds. No problem.
I say, and Eric and I talk about it all the time, be on the tip of the spear. Write the rules that make sense. I say wait 20 seconds. And it's tough because you want that dopamine. You want that instant, I did something about it. Wait 20 seconds. Marriage your thoughts with your heart. Marriage your thinking with your emotions. And find this balance to where your emotional state is not so reactive and not so out of control that you do something stupid.
Yes. And I've had to, do this sort of thing a lot in relationships with women. And most of the time they don't like that idea. Can we talk about it tomorrow? That doesn't usually go good. But yeah, the waiting and separating yourself, not letting the emotion of the moment, override what you're going to say. Because, we're both emotional, we hear something hurts our feelings. We're going to say something that might hurt their feelings. It's like, well, just take a second, be the bigger person, quote unquote. But yeah, this thing where everybody, you got to have a position on this. It's got to, you got to go hard with it. And there's no gray matter. there's everything's black and white. You got to go hard 100% in one direction all the time. So, like, there's so much nuance in this world that nothing is black and white. Nothing is 100%. Nothing.
Nothing. And you know what? What's interesting about that is that we mentioned the scientific method earlier in our conversation, which is really trial and error. You know, you're figuring things out. And this is what gets me. We mentioned communism and socialism. Critical thinking is trial and error. You know, okay, you put your hand up there on that hot burner. That's kind of the trial, and it's an error to put it there. But how many times are you going to do that? How many times are we going to overreact and continue to do the same nonsense over and over and over again, continuing to get the same result? That's not critical thinking. That is laziness. You'd rather be lazy and continue to get burnt than be smart and take your hand off the burner.
Right. Why? Like, what is that? Why is it so hard for people to be able to just, and it goes back to the ego. It's just like, why are people so set in like their ideas and their ways of thinking? And they think that, like, first of all, they think that everybody's paying attention to them, and really only everybody's paying attention to themselves and their own lives. You know, it's like they think, oh, this action I'm about to do is going to ripple throughout the globe. No, that's not probably not going to matter at all.
And everybody wants to be right. Who wants to be wrong? It's embarrassing. It's humiliating. But I can say this from my own personal experience on a growth, on a self-improvement journey. And it comes with two different emotional states. One of them is humility. And then right after humility, maybe they kind of go together, is courage. When you realize that we've heard this, you are the center of the universe. Everything comes from you, and you're the oracle, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, to a certain extent, but the reality is, no, you're not the center of the universe, and there are things that are bigger than you. And when you finally realize that, and you're open-minded, you can move forward. And you mentioned it, Eric. Ego. If you can't beat the snot out of your ego and humble it, good luck with self-improvement.
Yeah.
You're gonna continue to be the same a-hole you've been all your life.
Yeah.
And you know, that's all ego is. You're just an a-hole.
Yeah.
We need ego. Don't get me wrong. There is some gray area here, because ego can keep you safe in certain places, but you hit the nail on the head. That you have to find this balance, and you can't be all heart and you can't be all brain.
Right.
Unless of course you're Einstein and you're trying to figure out the theory of relativity. I don't know what the heart would have to do with that, but other than a passion for it. But you know what I'm saying.
Yeah. I think a good example, and it's happening right now, is the government releasing their UFO files, right?
Oh my gosh.
You know, I'm the type of person I like to be open-minded, you know, like there's absolutely stuff out there we don't know. You know, people think UFOs, they think aliens saw flying saucers, but when you get into the subject, stuff can get crazy. You know, you can get into Bigfoot, you can get into little fairies flying around, interdimensional, like it can go on and on and on and on. And I've had to learn where it's like, well, I don't like to be the person to be like, that's stupid, you know, because I'm watching it in real time where I've had people be like, you believe in UFOs? I'm like, I mean, I've personally seen stuff, and now the government confirms it, and very high-ranking military officials are coming out talking about it. You gotta say, I don't know, maybe. And why is that not okay? Why is it not okay to go, I don't know, maybe?
Because it's not okay nowadays to be commonsensical. Right. You know, you gotta toe the party line. But you know what's interesting about UFOs? And I'm going to digress here for a second.
Please do.
I was on one. I was aboard a UFO once.
Oh, yeah.
and it was interesting. It was dark. There was steam coming out of pipes. There were clear glass pipes with blood and hieroglyphics in it. There was a
I don't think
control.
I've heard this
Oh,
much of it from you.
there was a control room at the end of a hallway that I walked on. I knew that I was on a ship, right? And then I walk in, and there's these two creatures, looks very much like the aliens they show you, the Greys.
Uh-huh.
And they turned around, looked over their shoulder. Now I'm telling you, they were at a control panel. There was a star chart or something, a screen in front of them with all these stars going by. Remember the Star Wars hyper thing, the hyperspace thing where the Millennium Falcon just takes off. And then they kind of just looked at me like, what the hell took you so long, right? Now listen, it's real. There are spaceships out there. This spaceship was in another dimension. And I boarded this spaceship while I was being treated for a traumatic brain injury with spirit molecule, which is DMT. And I was using it as a means to cure some insomnia and some really rampant moods.
Well, that'll help you sleep at night.
Oh my gosh. So, so I was on the spaceship, different dimension, all too real. And that episode alone cured me of my chronic insomnia. I don't know if it was out of fear or just realizing that there was nothing to worry about.
Yeah.
I know we kind of digress here, but the reality is, and to support what you said, there are spaceships and unidentified objects out there, and they're not always in our dimension either.
Yeah.
There are other dimensions.
Well, I mean, I think it kind of coalesces nicely because, you talk about the ego, and that needs to go. You got to be knocked down. They call it ego death, down to zero. And really, like, your experience, I've had experiences leaving my physical body and knowing that I am doing so. It's not just like, it's a conscious experience where in that moment you're immediately shown that, like, okay, when you die, there's something else for sure. Like, because my body could be dead down there right now. I don't know. And here I am still sitting around thinking, behaving, doing my thing, And I think so much of what goes on now is people just think, well, when I'm dead, who cares? Like, whatever, I'll get away with it. And it's just like, you ain't getting away with shit. You when it's over, guess what? There's something. You got to answer some questions to somebody.
Yes, and that's a great point. You don't. Let's go with that thought. What you just said, which is the biggest hindrance to critical thinking: ego. And let me tell you something, ladies and gentlemen. You don't know it all. You don't. You might know more than me about some subjects, and I might know more than you about some subjects, but I don't know it all, so you don't know it all. Trust me, you don't. And guess what? You don't know what you don't know. And what you just talked about, Eric, was what we call an out-of-body experience, right? So if you're listening and then you've had one, then you can certainly relate to this. And if you haven't had one, then just listen. Maybe you'll learn something, right? And I don't mean to be an a-hole because I'm out of my ego state now, but a lady friend of mine several years ago, have you ever heard of Joe Dispenza?
Yes.
He wrote one of the books, You Are the Placebo. You're the person in charge of your behavior, the way you think and act. So I was separated from my wife, and I was all alone in the house down in Florida. I'm in Virginia now, and not too far from where you're at now, Eric. But I started to listen to this Joe Dispenza CD on the CD player all by myself, sitting on the couch in my house in Florida. And I'm listening to his narrative, and I'm really relaxing. And all of a sudden, dude, it was weird. Eric, I literally left my body. And you said it. I knew I was doing it. I left my body, floated to the corner of the living room, turned around, and I watched myself on the couch.
Whoa.
Yeah.
From a
guess what?
CD.
I wasn't on DMT then. Believe me.
That's my point. I said from a CD, you got that? Okay.
Got that from a Joe Dispenza CD.
Whoa.
Now, there was nobody around to integrate that, but it scared the ever living shit out of me.
Right.
When I was done with that, I turned on every light in the house. I went around looking around. I'm saying, where am I?
Right.
I'm back in my body. I reintegrated, whatever you call it. And I guess what I'm trying to get at, and you mentioned it, death of the ego, I left myself. And what I learned was that this body, this vessel that every single person has, this vessel is apart from our minds.
Right.
It's just, wow, that was pretty impactful. And that's what I'm trying to get at. If you haven't had that happen, if you haven't been scared out of your wits because you're floating in your own living room, seeing your own body sitting on the couch in a meditative state, then you don't know.
Yeah.
That's real.
Yeah. There's something about, we can sit here and describe it, all day, all night, all we want. But until you experience that, it's going to be, there's very few people that don't go through that to be able to still get the full picture. And I say full picture, a little more of the picture of what's happening, without that. If you don't sort of understand that, if you don't have an experience that shows you, it's going to be tough. Because again, the ego makes you hold on to that little thing where it's like, they could be wrong though. They could just be full of shit. Yeah, I don't know, and just in general, that the whole, the ego is keeping us from progressing as a species, I think.
Absolutely. You couldn't be more spot on, Eric. Even the yogis, the shamans, the gurus of ancient times, and even today, there's people still exist because it was a 21st century shaman that administered the spirit molecule. They knew that the mind needed rest every now and then because everybody's brain, what I don't even know what the figure is. I don't want to give out any wrong information, but we've got like 60,000 synapses a day. The brain never, the human brain's a sponge. Unless, of course, you're under the influence of drugs or alcohol, and then you just deaden everything. Everything's distorted. But they knew that these meditative states strengthened the gray matter. And, you asked the question, Eric, you have this on your list, man. How is it was on your list. How's the lack of critical, but I'm going to say this. Meditation is an opportunity to meet yourself, to go inward, to kill that ego if you have to. But it's a chance that you're giving your brain this chance to rest, but also in that restive state, it's actually able to have experiences like that.
Yeah, it's almost like
I don't know
people who are constantly in fight or flight sort of mindset are very rarely able to, be creative or have like a moment to, do a painting or like, and if our brain is always fight or flight, just being human, just gotta stay alive, gotta do this, gotta do that.
The reptilian, what is it? Limbic state.
Yes. So it's like meditation allows your brain to go out of sort of fight or flight and connect to the greater whatever,
That's a great point. Eric, if everybody took 20 seconds to use the gray matter, whatever emotion or whatever situation or event or whatever they were in. Now, sometimes there is a fight or flight. Sometimes you got to make things happen. If you're walking down a trail in the Great Smoky Mountains, and a bear's coming out, you don't want to just run. You want to bow up to them.
Yeah.
right? After you do whatever you do in your pants. But that's yeah. So there are times where you have to fight, and there are times that you have to take off. If you start running from a grizzly bear or a black bear, you're gonna find yourself in trouble. And I guess the point there is that we possess the capacity, if we utilize it, to do what we have to do to survive. That's just a survival instinct.
Mhm.
But like you say, if everybody's living like that every day, fight or flight, it would be like watching, the monorail, the bullet train, just going all the time. Take a deep breath, go inside, and look at your brain. Look at your thoughts. Look at yourself.
Mhm.
What is it that you're doing? Think about things. I guess that's all that it is. Don't just use the heart. That's how emotions hinder our thoughts, because we're so reactive. We get into this fight or flight. Again, there are times and places that actually applies and is needed. But for the most part, think about this. How many times has your wife thought the worst thing was going to happen about every single thing that comes down the pike? My wife is incredibly skilled in that. Worried about every flipping thing. And
I like the way you put that.
The worst possible outcome of everything that she worries about. And you know what? I can tell you right now, been with her for a long time, 99% of the outcomes, the bad negative outcomes that she thought were going to happen, never did.
Mm-hmm.
So we waste all this brain power, all these emotions, because we allow our egos and our fear and our fight or flight reptilian behavior kidnap what needs to be done.
Right.
It's kind of a long way of saying probably think before you jump, but on those bad things never happen.
Right. Sometimes those people who are bringing those up would be like, maybe because I brought it up, that's why it didn't happen. It's like, oh, that's okay. So you're just gonna keep doing it then.
Oh my God. Yeah. I mean, and then we talk about the law of attraction, or, you are what you think you are and all this stuff.
Right.
But you know what? Eric, you raise another good point, man. Keep dwelling on that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Keep dwelling on the negative shit.
Mm-hmm.
And guess what? Eric, you're right. The bad stuff's going to happen.
Right.
I believe that. Yeah. But you think good thoughts? Think about this. So there's only good days and there's only better days. Do two things when you get up in the morning. You get up, you flip on the light, you just starting your day. Go up to the mirror, look at yourself in the mirror, and say to yourself in the mirror, there's only good days and there's only better days. And then stare into your eyes and go, I love you, man. Or if you're a woman, I love you, woman. Do those two things every day. And you're going to start reprogramming your mind to not jump to all those conclusions about the worst thing that could ever happen, that never do. And then extend some self-love to yourself, and not the creepy kind that the world embraces. The pure kind.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody loves themselves. Oh, you're just narcissistic, and you're just arrogant, and stop with the bullshit.
Right.
Love yourself. That's the thing that you're talking about. If everybody did those two things every day, which is a part of critical thinking, if you did those two things every single day, and there's nobody around, you don't have to be embarrassed if you're an Andrew Tate type of guy, or you're this bravado, you don't have to worry. Nobody's watching you. How simple is that, Eric?
Yeah. Yeah. And it's just, the negative mindset thing. It's just like, you might complain. Even when something good or neutral does come up, you're more likely to look at it in a bad way if you continue on like that line of thinking, like you could take good stuff and make it bad just because of your previous way of thinking.
And now that's a great point. And, and now we've got all of these, if you don't want to think, right? Let's say you don't want to think. And I'm not going to say do this as a practice, but it's some good practice. Find an AI prompter. And there's nobody around. You don't have to go to the library. And just ask an AI prompt. What happens if I don't think?
Mm-hmm.
See what it tells you.
I've never asked it that.
Or what are your ways? What are the best ways to think? I mean, and it's all about the prompter, and it's all about the intention. Everybody's scared of AI. And Eric, you and I have had this talk about AI. We're not scared of it. We see that AI is only as good as the person that's prompting it.
Right.
If you got bad intentions, give me 10 ways to kill somebody.
Yeah.
It's going to tell you 10 ways to kill somebody. That's a bad intention.
Mm-hmm.
But give me 10 ways that I can have a lovely day today.
Mm-hmm.
And how many people have gotten caught because they've gone on their search engines or asked AI or searched for those 10 ways to kill somebody. Mm-hmm. And then they do it because their minds are polluted. So, leave yourself a paper trail of good thoughts.
Mm.
Forget doing shit like that. Just, turn over a new leaf today. And you ask me, why is it so difficult to change? Because change means I have to leave my comfort zone. So you're comfortable with people not liking you
mm-hmm.
because you're an a-hole full of your ego? Give me a break. You're your own worst enemy. We all are. How stupid can we be?
Mm-hmm.
How smart can we be? Wow. Find the marriage between your heart and your brain, which creates heart plus brain equals soul. What's the soul? Soul is what makes Eric, the complete package. Eric's soul is him utilizing his brain and his heart in perfect harmony. Eric's a cool guy, man. That guy's cerebral. He talks all the time about cool stuff. What do you want people to remember about you? That you were just an arrogant a-hole and a misogynist, Andrew Tate?
Yeah.
Think about that.
Right.
That dude is so out of whack, and many guys like him. You talk about a weak man.
Yeah.
You talk about a toxic man.
Yeah.
Just there's the definition right there.
Yeah.
But we don't have to do anything. We just have to set a different example.
Mm-hmm.
We live our life a different way. That's all.
Yeah. Yeah. And we would be remiss to not say that it can, like, this critical thinking that we're talking so much about can be taught. There are steps that, you can start to take as a person to sort of get this going in a way that'll help improve your life. And of course, you and I have been working on NeoMass Solutions as a way to sort of get the teaching side of this going.
Great point. Yes, we have been. Eric and I have been working on a lot of stuff behind the scenes, and a lot of it's, and also with a company in Ireland, to put together some tools that are actually useful and have high value. We have a Sentinel handbook that we've written in 9 languages. We've also recently revised it, and it's in production again to be rewritten with new ISBN numbers. That's a whole other story. But then we've got a mini course, which is video and all AI generated, called The Brain Freeze: Cracking the Ice on Critical Thinking. And I suggest that every parent, single or still together, watch that with their kids. And we're working on the brainery. We train brains, not grains. We have our college course done, PhD level. We have our high school curriculum done. And we're working on an AI-generated 20-minute cartoon for kids, all surrounding what Eric just said, the study and the use and the practice of critical thinking to add, what else we add? In intuition and logic and reason. Oh, those things. And then we mentioned it earlier, common sense. So yes, it can be taught. And that brings in the desire. Can you teach a guy like Andrew Tate?
Right.
Somebody that's
Not if you don't want to.
so in such a state of mind that's all ego. But that's what we're working on, and our whole hope and our intention is to create valuable tools that parents and non-parents can use to keep to learn new skill sets, so they take the 20-second deep breath before they do something stupid. Yeah.
And like, it's not as though we're putting out like we've got all the answers. We're not saying that. It's, for one thing, nobody is really putting out the sort of material that we're putting out. Where
Nobody. You're right. Nobody.
You know, if you take away anything from what we're talking about here, or the material itself, it's that, like, take what we have, look at it, take out what you like, and use that part in your life. You know, you don't have to be by the book of like, well, they said this and this and this. We're not trying to put out like we got all the answers. What we're trying to do is teach you that there's more to everything. And if you take some of what we're trying to teach and apply it to even the material itself, like, you can use critical thinking on what we're putting out and say, oh, well, in my life, it applies this way. You know, just getting the ball rolling on like, hey, we got to get back to, like, you know, some nuance in all of this stuff. We got to stop being so divisive and taking sides and teams and all of that. And we got to sort of unite. We got to sort of come together to make this world better, because the way it's going, it's just totally going two different directions.
You're so right. You know, and you raise a good point too. And this is, no, we don't know everything. We're learning just like everybody else. A lot of the things that this is like ancient history. You know, logic and reason hasn't changed since the beginning of time. When Socrates and Plato and Euripides and all these guys, Aristotle, were trying to figure out, you know, what is the truth? How do you get to the truth? Those kinds of things. But you raised a really awesome point. You know, all these self-help books, right? They all have these great programs. They're people that are trying to make a dollar, but more importantly, they're really trying to help people. I would like to think that most people that write a self-help book want to help. And so we buy a self-help book. How many do you have on your shelf at home? And you start doing it, and all of a sudden you're going along, and then you make a mistake. So you go, well, that program sucks. I'm not going to, that does not, and I'm a loser, so I got to find another program. And sooner or later, you become addicted to self-help books, and you just think you're a loser. But what Eric just said is that reach out, seek self-improvement, seek more knowledge, but use what works for you.
Mm-hmm.
You know, not everything that we say individually or together, it may not work for you, but just because it didn't work for you doesn't mean that you are a loser.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, I have met so many people in my lifetime that consider themselves losers because every time they start a new program to self-help, they F up. No, it just means it didn't work for you on that particular day. That thing didn't work, right?
Yeah.
So
the loser is the person not trying.
Exactly. And what I like about what you just said a second ago, you talked about these important issues that everybody's talking about. And nobody's looking for the reasons why we are divided, right? They just continue to blow the megaphone. I heard the other day where somebody just told me that. I just wrote that down. A podcast interview is a magnet. It's not a megaphone. It's a magnet to learn, to listen to other people, men and women, about things that are important to us, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, the value of conversation is if you actually pick up on a solution. And that's why we went with the dot solutions, because we want to be a solution. Everybody talks about all these critical issues, and you're right, Eric. And nobody's offering any solutions.
Yeah. That's the whole point of what we're doing. It's like, well, we're trying something. At least we're doing something.
Exactly. And so do something. Get up off your rear end, do something. But you know what? And if you make a mistake, which we all do, doesn't mean you're a loser. At least you were trying.
Mm-hmm.
We've heard that thing about the man being in the arena, right? Well, be that woman, be that man, be in the fight. There's always going to be naysayers and hecklers and people making fun of you. But guess who the losers are? Of course, that's a judgment. But if you're not in the ring, shut the.
Yeah.
Be quiet.
Yes.
Yep. And then, which leads me, you mentioned UFOs a little, we talked about it, but we talk about conspiracy theories.
Oh. Mm-hmm.
Ooh, and you know what we say a conspiracy theorist is? It's a label that somebody places on you because they don't want you asking any questions.
Right.
It's kind of like a deflection. Eric, he's crazy. He's a conspiracy theorist. He believes in UFOs. But yet, one just landed in their backyard, right? So that whole conspiracy theorist thing, it's kind of funny because it's usually, we've heard this is kind of cliche. That isn't it funny how the conspiracy theorists, given a period of time, sometimes the things that they were talking about are true.
Right.
I can tell you this.
As things go, it seems like even more of what we could even imagine is true, and it's jarring. I think that
yeah, and but I can tell you something that's not a conspiracy, and you can bank on it. Intuition works.
Mm-hmm.
It's called that gut feeling, and Eric mentioned a little while ago that reptilian feeling that something's not quite right here. I got to get out of Dodge. Critical thinking can help you get to the truth. Logic works. Being reasonable works. And common sense works. If I'm not home by 5 o'clock, which is dinner time, then I'm not going to get dinner. Don't you think it's common sense or logical or reasonable to critically think with this feeling that you're not going to get dinner? And Eric talked about consequences earlier. It's all there. That's not a conspiracy. That's reality.
Mm-hmm.
UFOs aren't a conspiracy. It's a reality. A lot of things that we think are critical or conspiracies, there's got to be something there, right? Like all of these scientists. That's another one. Who knows? All of these.
Oh, I just talked about that on one of my other shows, and it's
something. You would be non-commonsensical to think that something wasn't up. So the conspiracy theorist label that's all it is, and you can't heal if you're being labeled.
Right.
Yeah. So let's get away from that. Quit calling people names. Quit labeling people. Just say, you know what? That's a human that thinks differently from me.
Right.
And who knows? Maybe I'll learn something from that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's just like I hear people, talk about things, and really, it's never so much about what they're saying. It's about their attitude and how they either came to this conclusion or I listen to a lot of stuff where guys, they bring in scientists and they want to talk, how are the pyramids made? And the guy's a scientist, he's a geo whatever. And this person will completely dismiss whatever crackpot theories out there, even though it might be true, but they'll dismiss it completely just based on from what I know in my master's doctorate degree, that's impossible. So it must be wrong, and they attach so much of it to what they know up here, where it's just anybody who's dismissive of stuff immediately, I'm I'm out. I don't need to.
Yeah, healthy skepticism is what you need. Healthy know-it-allism is not good. You know, so I'm going to throw a conspiracy out there. Let's have fun here, and then you come back to us.
Yeah.
So there's an ancient site, pre-Columbian site down in Bolivia.
Talking about Puma Punko?
Well, Tiwanaku.
Tiwanaku.
Right, which is think about this. There's like I don't know the exact number, but it's a courtyard. There's stelas, you know, these monoliths.
Mm-hmm.
And the archaeologists, by today's standards, have taken lasers, and these stones are perfectly aligned, right? All the stela, whatever they are, they're perfectly aligned, like most of the ancient ruins are, with the astronomical phenomenon we find in the sky, right? There's a pyramid of the Jaguar down in Guatemala, or Chichen Itza in Mexico, in the Yucatan, where the tail, the stairs going up actually move at the different equinoxes, right? So how did these people do this? But anyhow, at Tiwanaku, you have these 6 or 8 granite or stone insets to make the courtyard that's perfectly laser, you know, you can, and they quarried them like 150 miles away, and they weigh 12 tons.
Right.
Or down in Sacsayhuaman outside of Cusco.
Yep.
The stones are so tight, you can't even put a piece of paper between them.
Right. And they're not square. They're not squares. They're crazy shapes that make no sense, but there's another one that fits in perfect to the crazy shape, and you can't. I've been to that one. That one freaking blew my mind.
Yeah, it's so crazy. Or like you mentioned, the pyramids, where at certain times of the year, the light from one of the stars, Sirius, I think, or one of the constellations, goes into the burial chamber. But it's perfectly lined up. So, but anyhow, what I'm getting at is did they have plasma cutters? Who knows? But those stones outside of Cusco, they hand carved a locking system to put these stones together, where the lock, you can't see them, you know, you can see the stones on, but what I'm getting at is, here's the conspiracy. I postulate, not hypothesize, what the hell, that's not even a word, we can make it up, but I postulate that ancient people, builders, either were brilliant beyond, I mean, we've had people today say they could not recreate that today.
Right.
With the tools, supposedly all they had. I postulate that those ancient peoples had help from off this planet, some kind of extraterrestrial help. Prove me wrong.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Tell me how if you can tell me how they did it, like you just mentioned, what they look like, irregular shapes, heavy ass stones with a locking device on the backside.
Yeah.
And what's the deal with these flat top Mayan pyramids? That if you take a space image, that they're the miles and kilometers apart, but they're perfectly aligned mathematically, engineer-wise, and astrologically, or the Nazca lines, or any of these. Yeah. We kind of digressed here, but my point is, prove that conspiracy wrong. Who were they carving a spider for? Yeah. When you couldn't see it on the ground, but from space, that it took a spaceship to leave the Earth's atmosphere to see it. How did they get that design carved? What do they have? A hot air balloon in the Incan times? You know, give me a break. The Nazca lines.
Oh, I'm with you.
Something's up with that.
I'm with you. I think, even I've had the thought of, and it's not my idea, but like do you know that like if we stop making things, we stop maintaining things now, that like in 1,000 years, the only thing that will show any sort of evidence that we were here is the pyramids and Mount Rushmore. every single skyscraper would fall. It'd all be taken over by vegetation, all this, like it would be just gone. Like we would have no, if we just didn't keep on, if everybody died today, in 1,000 years, we'd have those two things. And it's just like, I think there's a very good chance. Who knows how many times humans have raised their technological levels to a point to be able to do those sorts of things and then just wiped out, starting from zero again. Do I think it could be extraterrestrial? Sure. Yeah. Why not? Like that would certainly answer more of that. Well, what about this stuff? That would explain a lot more. But like the idea that like people are so set on, oh no, it was done this way. Would the archaeologists all agree? And it's just like they don't fucking know. They don't know. Like they're just doing that because that's what they were taught in school. And for some reason, everybody's gonna be so sure about everything. Can't just say, oh, interesting. Maybe we'll find out one day.
Well, therein lies a really good point about knowledge and wisdom and learning and education and all that. And if you're on a journey or on this mission of self-awareness, self-actualization, and you're not open-minded, like you said earlier, if the person's closed-minded, you're out.
Mm-hmm.
You cannot educate a closed-minded person. And we've already said you don't know everything. You may not want to hear that, but you don't. And the minute you can accept that and realize that there's a lot more that you need to learn, just like I do, and I can admit it, I've had some dark times in my life, and I realized that it's okay for people to have a different perspective from me, even if it's different. I don't have a problem with that. I really don't. Their life journey and experiences is different from mine. We talk about what hinders us critical thinking wise, and a lot of times it's our bias as well, not just the closed-mindedness, but it could be cultural or just the environment that we grew up in. There's some things I've been around real racism, right? Let's just talk about that for a second. And I've seen false racism. I'll just leave it at that. There's real racism and there's false racism. And if people are using the race card to divide people of different races, you might want to look at that. Why would they want, the one that stares at us in the face, why would they want blacks and whites peoples fighting each other? Why?
Right.
Don't we live on the same rock? Just think about that. And now, oh, there it is. So there you go. That's the moniker for this show. Shock and Awe podcast show with Eric and John. And all we're asking.
Shock and raw. We're still getting used to it.
Yeah. No, but you're right. But all we're asking you is to think. That's all. Just think.
Exactly.
Take a deep breath.
Right.
It's okay to think.
Nobody can see what you're thinking in there. It's okay to have weird thoughts, to have,
But I did have a girlfriend in college. She told me one time this. She goes, I know what you're thinking. And I don't know if she saw my brain, but I think she saw it in my eyes. That's a joke, Eric. That's a joke, man. I know what you're thinking, dude. But anyhow, but he's right. Eric's
I thought
right.
she was going to bust out with some crazy. I was still waiting. I was like, oh, okay, I got it.
No, but anyhow, there's my misogynist. No, I'm not a misogynist, but that's, yeah, he's right. Nobody knows what you're thinking, but take some time to think, because you might just find out that little bit of extra time put you in a better headspace, but made you do something or say something or act in a certain way that was balanced to what the reaction or what was going on. That makes any sense.
Yeah. And just before we get out of here, that is a very good point to what you're talking about. Really pay attention to how you feel. Does it, like, if you meditate, do you actually feel a little bit better? Like, are you actually paying attention to like what's happening in your own body and mind. Actually pay attention to that. When you don't do things that, like, pay attention to that too, because there's a lot of, little things that happen that you're like, "Ooh, it's like that's gonna stick with me a little bit." Like, I shouldn't have said that, but like you might not ever do anything about it, but it's just like pay attention to that little feeling that you got when you said something that probably wasn't very nice or whatever. Because it works both ways.
And a lot of times what I found out when we're in a certain situation or we're confronted with an event is that pay attention to that intuition. If the hair on the back of your neck goes up when somebody tells you something, or you get goosebumps,
Mm-hmm.
or you think inside, what?
Yeah.
Chances are, whatever you're being exposed to, or whatever you're hearing, you got to dig a little bit deeper.
Yep.
And we see these minions, and we mentioned it earlier in the show, these people that just mindlessly follow the collective.
Mm-hmm.
Collective, it has a place. If there's two tribes and one tribe's bigger than the other, and you're locked in mortal combat to save your hunting grounds. We can talk about violence later, but there are times when you have to have a collective mindset for the survival of the group. But if the collective mindset is adhering to something that is so totally anti-humane or anti-human,
right, goes against your best interest even.
Yeah, and one thing that Eric and I have talked about, we're going to be careful to keep politics out of it. But I would say this, and this is something to think about. If there's any person or politician that is supporting the river to the sea, think about that. The annihilation of other human organisms. You have to ask yourself, and this is just one example, is that the right thing to be saying or to be supporting? Is that the kind of leader we want?
Mm-hmm.
Somebody that's actually advocating for the destruction of a whole culture? People.
Right.
That's just a question. And maybe we'll get to that in this show where we ask a question that has a political, we can't escape politics. But if we can't,
and I don't think we should. Yeah, I don't think we should be afraid of it either. Like,
if we can't talk about stuff, then we're already behind the 8 ball.
Right. That's what we're here to do.
So
it's awkward.
I'm going to just give you 3 habits.
All right, give us some good parting words.
Thank you, and thanks to everybody that has hung around to listen to the valuable things that we're discussing. The first habit, pay attention to your goosebumps. Make that a habit. Pay attention to the little hairs on the back of your neck. Make it a habit. In other words, tune into your intuition. You can make that a habit. What is my intuition feeling or saying about this? Another one is take 20 seconds. Take 20 seconds. That can mean whatever you want it to mean. Take 20 seconds. And the third habit, tell yourself every day, it's a good day or it's going to be a better day. And tell yourself you love yourself. Mm-hmm. And do it in the privacy of your own bathroom or wherever you have a mirror.
I just want to, just on the 20 seconds thing, I would say learn how to calibrate it for yourself. Because for me, 20 seconds ain't enough. So I need, lots of times I'll need a day, but find out your 20 seconds. Find out what that is. Implement it.
No, that's a great point because it's different for everybody. And guess what? It's okay to be different. It's okay to be you, be real, and sleep at night.
Mm-hmm.
It's that simple. And so, Eric, I appreciate your time, and we got a lot of things to still talk about. Great questions and great conversation.
Yeah, man. It's a good start to what we got going on. I look forward to more shows.
So Shock and Raw.
Got it.
Love
Nailed
yourself,
it.
baby. There you go.
All right. Thanks, guys.